Welcome back. October is Pedestrian Safety Month, and a new report is out showing the amount of fatal crashes in Nevada just last month. And we have Andrew Bennett with the Office of Traffic Safety here joining us live to discuss this and much more in our weekly traffic segment. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I know we chatted beforehand, so I've already seen the numbers. So I'm curious if you'll just let everyone at home know what the stats are for the month of September and why we're headed in the wrong direction here. What's the problem?
Unfortunately, alone in September, we had 32 fatalities statewide, which brings our total up to 224 fatalities statewide, with 136 of those happening just here in Clark County. This is unacceptable, as this is a 6% increase from where we were at this time last year. We are heading in the wrong direction, and we need to be making sure that we are heading in that right direction of reducing fatalities rather than increasing. And unfortunately, again, it's still impairment and speed that's causing most of these fatality crashes.
So I know we've talked about this before. It's kind of a two-way street. I know you mentioned impairment, but what other things can drivers do, but also what can pedestrians do to try to bring that number down?
Absolutely, and with October being Pedestrian Safety Month, the vast majority of Nevadans believe that pedestrian safety is a two-way street, and we need to make sure that we have the driver's cooperation and the pedestrians' cooperation. For drivers, making sure that we always drive sober, we're slowing down, and we're stopping on red and watching for crosswalks. That's the number one thing that, as drivers we can do to make sure that we are watching out for others. For pedestrians, we need to make sure that they're using the infrastructure in place so that they have the best chance of crossing the street. We understand that infrastructure might be lacking in certain areas, but we all can do our part to make sure that we get home safely at the end of the day.
So this might be kind of a silly question, but I'm curious to know if this is happening in a specific area here in town. And if so, is there a trend that you're seeing in those areas? I'm thinking lack of street lights or just areas that might be dark could be a factor here.
So you're right, most of the pedestrian fatality crashes, about 62%, happen when it is completely dark. We know where these pedestrian crashes happen. There's 8 streets, including Maryland, Eastern, Tropicana, Flamingo, that are the lead streets that have pedestrian fatalities. The DOT and some of the other jurisdictions did an incredible job of removing Boulder Highway off of that list by increasing infrastructure to allow pedestrians to have the opportunity to cross the street safely. But we're also seeing a high level of impairment when it comes to the pedestrians as well. Over 50% of our pedestrian fatalities were legally impaired when they were walking at the time of their crash. And so we need to make sure that everybody's fit to walk and fit to drive, again, when they're trying to get from point A to point B.
I know you're talking about fatalities, but we've talked about just DUI accidents and crashes, I should say, in general. Do you want to just chime in on that a little bit and just really drive it home to people at home why they need to be safe on the road?
Unfortunately, a lot of folks don't believe that it can be them that is either at fault in a fatality or a fatal crash. They're involved in a crash or a fatal crash. And so when we talk about DUIs and some of these other behaviors that we often talk about, these are the difference between making it home at the end of the day and not. And so as we're approaching the holiday season, Halloween through New Year's Eve is the second busiest time of the year for us. And so we have to make sure that everybody understands that is the shared responsibility. And that we watch out for our loved ones and we watch out for strangers just alike, so that we all have that common goal of making sure we get home safely.
All right, Andrew Bennett, thank you so much for spending time with us today. We appreciate it. We will check in with you again soon.
Thanks so much.
And we'll be right back.